Let's be honest. You probably didn't start your business because you wanted to become a full-time content creator. But somewhere along the way, marketing started to feel like that was your whole job. Like growth required more visibility, more content, more of you everywhere, all the time. That's what we're going to talk about today. Welcome back to the Consistency Corner podcast. And today we're going to be chatting about personal branding. And for a lot of founders, that visibility pressure is where mental load creeps in. Not because you don't understand marketing, but because you're trying to figure out how much of yourself needs to be in it and where. You likely sell a service or you have a company. So you're like, why does this have to be all about me? And you might even be wondering or asking yourself, why does anybody care? In this episode, we're talking about how to infuse your personal brand into your marketing without overthinking it, without turning yourself into an influencer, and without adding another layer of decision fatigue to your plate. Because listen, in 2026, the future of marketing is founder-led, but not in the way that the internet maybe makes it sound. So what does founder-led actually mean? Well, here's what it doesn't mean: becoming an influencer, posting nonstop video, or sharing your entire life online. It means thoughtful, intentional storytelling from the person behind the business, not influencer marketing, not selling protein powder and Amazon links, not trend chasing, but letting people understand how you think, what you stand for, and how you lead. And this matters now more than ever. In 2026, we are surrounded by AI generated content, clean, polished, efficient, and also increasingly interchangeable. What cuts through isn't volume, but perspective. Founder led brands are winning because they bring context, judgment, nuance, perspective, and lived experience into the conversation, which are things that AI cannot replicate effectively. And here's something that we don't talk about often enough. When it comes to your marketing, most people probably aren't finding you on social media, but they are checking you out on social media. Maybe they heard about you through a referral, a podcast, a networking event, and then they go to your Instagram or your LinkedIn to answer one question. Does this business feel credible, aligned, human? Social media becomes the credibility check. That's why a mix of brand content and founder presence really matters. The founder creates connection. The brand reinforces credibility. And together, they reduce friction in the decision-making process. And as humans, we have a billion decisions to make all the time, right? So creating that connection is so important. And that, again, continues to become a conversation about mental load, because while you showing up in your content helps your buyer with their mental load, you're like, yeah, okay, but that's adding to my mental load to figure out how I'm showing up in my content. So this is where a lot of founders do get stuck. They hear founder led and they assume that it means constant face to camera, daily personal posting, being on all the time. But that's not the strategy. Face to camera content can be incredibly powerful if it aligns with your capacity and your comfort zone. But it's not the only way to build trust. If you love being on camera, great. You can leverage that and you should. If you don't, that doesn't disqualify you from being part of founder-led marketing. Founder-led is about voice and perspective, not format. That voice can show up through long-form content, written thought leadership, interviews, podcasting, collaborative content shaped with your team or collaboration partners. And it can also be video, but it doesn't have to be. You don't have to force yourself into a format that drains you just because it's popular. That's how mental load sneaks back in. I get this question all the time. Do I need to build my personal brand and business brand? And the real answer is it depends. I know. That's like every marketer's favorite answer, but it's true. It depends on your goals, your growth stage, and your leadership role. For me, as an example, I have the Consistency Corner and I've created a brand presence for the company, our agency, an education hub. And also, I show up as Ruthie, the founder and leader of the Consistency Corner. And in my platforms and channels, I share different angles. My personal presence carries things like leadership perspective, behind the scenes context, how I think and make decisions, and my perspective as a mom founder. And, I got to sprinkle in some fun stuff too, like elder millennial humor, golf, Purdue, boy bands, you know the drill. But you don't have to include those personal things if you don't want to. It just makes it fun for me, but that's a sidebar conversation. Here's the thing. The business brand then carries things like structure, credibility, our offers, our processes, proof, testimonials. They don't compete, they support each other. And for founders growing teams, this distinction actually reduces mental load because the brand doesn't rely solely on you, but your voice anchors it and amplifies it. One of the biggest questions I get all the time, and I know it can be a mental block when thinking about your own personal brand and your perspective and the opinions and things that you share, is this limiting belief that I'm not that interesting. I don't have a cool story. What would people even want to know about me? Here's the truth. Your audience isn't looking for you to be interesting. They're looking for something to connect with. Personal brand isn't about sharing everything. It's about revealing values and human connection through details. For me, that might be things like sparkly pins and whiteboards. I love a good sports analogy, talking about building systems that make life lighter, and talking honestly about leadership and motherhood. For someone else, it might be talking about mentoring or creative problem solving or obsession with a specific point of view in their industry. It could be about building calm in a complex business or their lived experience that brings value to their audience. And let me tell you something, you're going to get sick of your own story. But that doesn't mean it's overused. That means it's finally becoming familiar. Repetition doesn't make your message boring. It makes it believable. And that's why when we onboard clients, we spend a lot of time talking about the story, not for fluff, not for leverage, but we look at your origin story, your evolution, your mission, the moments that shaped how you lead, not just the company and the offers, because those stories become strategic infrastructure. Once you're clear, your team can help you scale your message without diluting your voice. Founder-led does not have to mean founder only, but a strong support team can turn your perspective, your patterns, your language into content that actually sounds like you and supports the brand. And this is where long-form content can really matter so much. A long-form blog post, a podcast, a deep piece of thinking can become weeks of aligned, authentic content without you starting from scratch every single time. And that definitely reduces decision fatigue. So here's what I'm seeing that's working right now in early 2026 and what I think is going to be continuing through the rest of the year. Founder-led storytelling that ties to values and offers. Thought leadership along with trends. Content rooted in real conversations and real scenarios because ChatGPT can't replicate those. Simple human video, not overproduced. And I know I said you don't have to be on video, but even just you in a B-roll video is enough to make it feel more human and more connected. And consistency anchored in strategy, not pressure. The brands growing aren't going to be the loudest. They're going to be the clearest. And clarity, once again, lowers that mental load. So here's the takeaway. You don't have to become a creator to think like one. Founder-led marketing is about perspective, not performance. And when your personal brand and business work together, marketing will actually become lighter, clearer, more sustainable, and more effective. And if you want help building that kind of strategy, one that supports your growth and your capacity, that's what we do inside the Consistency Corner. So take a look at the show notes for a link to our service guide. And stay tuned for the launch of our new membership, the Strategy Studio, which will include access to one of our proprietary tools, the Brand Clarity GPT, which will actually help you build a brand guide that infuses both your personal brand and your company brand, what we call a hybrid brand, so that you have clarity and your team has clarity and AI has clarity. So that, for example, Ruthie's voice and the Consistency Corner's voice are similar, but not the same. So I hope this gave you some things to think about today. I hope you're feeling a little bit more confident when it comes to being the face of your brand, whether that's your personal brand, your company brand, both, or some combination of the three. And if you have questions about it, stay tuned for the launch of the Strategy Studio because we'll be talking about those types of things. And it's a container where you get to brainstorm and ask questions and really mastermind with myself and the other members on what these decisions mean for you, your business, and your marketing. So I'll see you in the next episode, my friends. Thank you for being here, and we'll chat again soon.